Hey, it's Michael from For Performance, Bike Doctors Hornchurch, and the Enduromite YouTube channel back again talking about the second video in our series on bike fitting. In the last video we looked at what is bike fitting and we kind of give you a bit of a definition on that. So in this one what I want to think about is what we actually do in a session. Now this is going to be very much focused around what I do as a fitter and how I run my sessions. Now every bike fit session is going to be slightly different depending on who it is that's doing the session for you and the tools that they use. So before we start, I'll just explain a little bit about my training, my background and how it is that I work. So I am Bikefit trained. If you want to go online and have a look at what Bikefit is, Bikefit was the initial company that started off the world of bike fitting. That's kind of why it's called bike fitting, I suppose. Now, bike fit is very much based around using the skills of the fitter to get you set up as well as you can be. We don't use technology so much. Unlike the other one or the other companies that are out there that do it, so like Retail that are owned by Specialized, they use laser alignment, as do a company called Geobiomized, which is the best name for a company I've ever heard of, that use motion capture technology as well. The reason why I am working with Bikefit and I use Bikefit technology is because my background is in injury rehabilitation, strength and conditioning and biomechanics. So using my skill set from that in terms of the Bikefit setup just works a lot better for me than being constrained by having to use other technology. It works a lot better. So that's just me. That's my background. So how would I run a session? So the first thing that I do before your session is you get sent a questionnaire. Now the questionnaire is about getting the background on a few different elements for you. So the first thing that we'll look at is what you want to get from the session. Is it important to you to improve your performance? So do we need to look at how aerodynamic you are, how much power you produce? Or is it more important that you're just comfortable on the bike so that you can enjoy your rides more? In that case, we'll look at a more relaxed way of getting you set up. Now that's not to say that you can't have all things. Ultimately, you should never really be in pain on your bike, and if you do get uncomfortable after a period of time, then it doesn't matter how aerodynamic you are or how much power you can put out, you won't be able to do that, and the whole thing is just going to be a massive waste of time. Okay, so we will try and look to balance all of those things most of the time, unless there's a very specific reason why we wouldn't do that. The other things that we cover off in your questionnaire are things like injury history, things like cycling history, and just the other sort of health and safety stuff that we've got to make sure that you are fit and healthy enough to come and have a bike fit. It's not a massively testing session in terms of your endurance ability or your fitness, so there's nothing to worry about there, but we do need to cover those bases. So whenever you do arrive for your session, the first thing that we do is we run some assessments. So I'm going to do some movement assessments to look at how your body moves through space. They're quite easy. And I'll do some postural assessments as well so that I can look at any muscular imbalances or any joint movements that shouldn't be there. That takes in the region of about 10 minutes to get those assessments done. They're not a huge part of it, but they do have their place and they are important because we can then use that to focus what we look at later on. Next up, we'll measure you for your saddle to make sure that your saddle is the right size and shape. People think that a saddle is just a saddle, but there is a lot more to it in terms of width to match the sit bones in your body, but also the shape of the saddle to match your flexibility, which is kind of how it links back into the movement assessments as well. So we'll look at getting you set up there. Then we'll do your initial video capture. So that's about 30 to 60 seconds of just videoing you on the bike so that we can have a look at how your body moves while you're on the bike and look at some initial changes that we can make. Okay. When we've got that initial video capture, we'll then do some specific measurements. So I'll use some of the video to check out some of your joint angles, just to make sure that they are where we want them to be. And if there's any sort of big problems with that, we'll make some adjustments there and then on those, just to get you the macro adjustments done. And then I'll get some different tools out and measure some other bits. So you'll end up with, different things hanging off your knees and off your hips and and some other different tools to take angles of your feet, and it's all kind of interesting, good fun stuff. Once we've got those measurements, we then start to get you set up. And we start off with the feet and move upwards. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll set your cleats. When we set your cleats, we're looking for how far forward and back they are, because that makes a big impact on the style of riding you do and the muscles that you use whilst you are riding. We'll then look at how far apart they are and the angle that they put your foot at. Because what we really want to look at is making sure that you're set up in a nice, solid, straight alignment. You've not got your knees flying out to either side or moving around too much whilst you're pedaling, because that impacts on pain. Ultimately, it impacts on longevity, because if you're pedaling in the wrong way for a long time, you can end up with an injury. But it also impacts power, because any additional movements that you are making which aren't moving you forwards are a waste of your energy. Yeah. We then move to your saddle. So we've already talked about the saddle being the right size and shape. That's cool. The next thing that we want to look at is where it sits. So is it too far forward? Is it too far back? Is it too high? Is it too low? And we'll get that set so that it's roughly about right in comparison to where your shoes and your feet sit on your pedals, to make sure that your joints are in a good alignment there. Once we've got your saddle set, we'll then move on to the handlebars to make sure that we've got enough reach on the handlebars. This is where things can get a little bit interesting, and this is where things tend to divert a little bit. If you're looking for a road setup, we will focus on your road bike handlebars. Are they far enough forwards and back, and are they adjusted to the right angle? We might also look at how wide they are. If they're particularly narrow and they're putting too much pressure on your shoulder joints, we might look at having wider bars. If they're too wide and you feel like you're steering a boat at all times, then we might look at some thinner bars for you. If you're going down the TT route or the triathlon route, we then get into a lot of detail around handlebar setup, because handlebar setup has a big impact on how you are aerodynamically and comfort-wise in that position. It would probably take me a long time to explain all of the different adjustments that we do, but ultimately what we will look to do handlebar-wise for you as a time trialist or a triathlete is get you in the most slippery position as we can. That's kind of all I'm going to say, because we might be there for quite a while talking about different extensions and different angles of handlebars, different stacks on your arm pads, and all of that different stuff that comes into it. There is a lot that goes into a time trial and a triathlon setup, which is why they tend to be a little bit more expensive than a road bike setup. Yeah. So once we've got all that done, we'll then do our secondary video capture. Our secondary video capture is to show you the difference between first and second, and to nail down some of the measurements so that we can then talk about how you would replicate that on other bikes. Yeah. Once we've done that video capture, I'll then look at doing some coaching with you on how to maintain your position. So a lot of people struggle sometimes with shoulder carriage and knee carriage, and making sure that they hold that in the right position whilst they are going through time on their bike. We can provide you with some drills that will help you to get that better over time. And then finally, aftercare. So some stretching, some mobilization work, and some other just information that will help you get the most out of your Bikefit. And we'll let you know sort of how long it should be before you start to feel really comfortable in your new position, because it is something that you do have to adjust to over time. Yeah. And that is pretty much how a Bikefit session runs. As I said in the previous video, your Bikefit session can be anything between about 90 minutes, anywhere up to about 3 hours. And a lot of that depends on where you start from. It can also depend on things like whether we need to change a lot of different saddles for you, or we need to change handlebars, or if you're doing a TT setup. That can all add time onto it. But that's generally how long it takes. If you're interested in getting a Bikefit session or booking in, there will be a link below this video where you can click to see the options that I've got through Bike Doctors. And you can book from there through there as well if you want to. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you very much. I hope it's been useful for you, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video where I'm going to be talking about the 3 elements to bike fitting and how we would manage those elements through a Bikefit session. See you later.